Hello, and welcome back to yet another episode of the Real Japa Experience. Thank you so much for joining me today. As always, I am Joanna, your host. On today's episode, I have with me a very special person. This is somebody that is close to me. His name is Jeremiah Idowu. If you know my full name, and you've just heard his full name, you'll be able to make the connection. So, this person moved to the UK at the same time as I did in 2021 for his master's degree at Coventry University. Obviously, he is graduated now, and that is the reason why he's here today. He's going to take us through his journey post graduation, the things he had to do to get a visa after his student visa expired. For those that don't know, typically international students are offered two visa options when they use up their student visa. So you either go through the postgraduate study work visa route, which lasts for 2 years, or you get a skilled workers visa, which is when your employer sponsors you and you have to work in that organization for either 3 years or 5 years, depending on the visa sponsorship you get. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Today, we're going to be covering a lot of things that has to do with employability, how to network, how to get professional jobs, how to do well in a professional setting. So stay with me today as we learn. Today's episode is a learning experience for me as well. So I am very sure you're going to be learning a lot from this episode too. So stay tuned. Good evening, Jeremiah. How are you?
Hello, good evening. I'm very well, thank you. How you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for joining us on this episode today.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here to learn.
Thank you. So let's get straight into it. I think the first thing I would like to know about your story, what was your main motivation to move into the UK to study? Because you went to a good university in Nigeria, your grades were good, you were all right. What was the main motivation to move into UK to further your education?
That's a very interesting question. I'm not sure I've actually properly reflected on that before, but to be honest, the major reason I decided, or I'm not sure. I would say decided. I think it was more about opportunity that was handed to me. I would say I would rephrase that better to say I got an opportunity to come study in the UK, which was good, and I felt I would probably have a brighter future migrating from Nigeria to the UK and studying and trying to see if I could add value to the community and also try to grow as a person and also improve myself personally. So it was more about my future as a young person and also about me adding more value to my life and also giving back to the community where I find myself.
Okay, that sounds typical because obviously it's different for everyone. Some people they've had that dream for a very long time to move abroad, and some people it's more like the opportunity came to me. So that makes sense, and it's really good. You're blessed to have had such an opportunity.
Yeah, yeah. I would say I'm one of those that are probably very, very, very lucky to have such opportunity handed to them. Yeah.
Obviously, you moved to the UK. Wait, first question that I'll ask before I ask my next question. Did you have like any kind of job experience? You moved to the UK to study masters in public health. Did you have any kind of experience in that field or that industry rather before you moved to the UK?
Right. So the first point of correction, my masters was in global healthcare management and not public health. So they are quite related, but there's still a little bit of differences between them. Yeah. And moving to work experience, well, I didn't really have any experience in healthcare management prior to coming to the UK. I only had my only work experience, I think, at that time was some couple of internships that I did, and also my deployment from the national service, popularly known as NYSC. I was deployed to a primary school, so I was a classroom teacher throughout the duration for my NYSC. So aside that, I didn't really have any major experience, although my first degree was in basic medical sciences. And I also did a couple of volunteering also during my national youth service.
That's quite impressive,
Yeah.
actually. That's very, very impressive to have had the bits and bobs of experiences here and there from Nigeria. So what was your first job role? What was the experience with your first job role in the UK? What was that job role and what was it like doing it?
Okay. So as a student, my first job was I got a job in the warehouse. I think it was floor worker or something, but it was in a warehouse and it was in a food packaging warehouse, and I think it was about £8 something per hour back then in 2021. Yeah, I think at that time it was bang on minimum wage. Yeah, yeah, minimum wage is about £8 something. I can't remember specifically. Yeah, yeah. So I was working in the warehouse, and I was involved in food packaging on the floor of the warehouse, and then afterwards I did a couple of more different roles and within the warehouse. I was a cleaner at some point, and then finally, I was a stock controller. That was the last role I had in the warehouse before I left.
Wow.
Yeah,
So obviously your warehouse job has nothing, well, let's just say technically nothing to do with what you were studying. Obviously, you would have gotten like transferable skill like communication and multitasking and whatnot, but like skills that are specific to what you were studying, you probably wouldn't have gotten them from that warehouse role. So, whilst you were studying and working that part-time job, how did you work on yourself to make yourself employable and valuable to employers? For somebody that got a good job immediately or almost immediately after graduating, how did you do that?
right. I think you mentioned something very specific at the beginning of this podcast, and what you mentioned was the fact that I went to a very good university, probably one of the, I wouldn't say most expensive, but it's still quite expensive, a top rated private university in Nigeria. I think going to that university actually had a lot to contribute to my speed and also like the level of my skills before coming to the UK. Yes, yes. So coming down now to the skills, of course, I was in the warehouse and I knew that that was in my industry, and I knew I was just there for a very short time, definitely, because I wasn't built to work in that specific industry, right? So I think one of the major things was I was really focused on my studies at that time, and although it was pretty challenging because of COVID and all of those, but the major thing is most of the relevant skills I needed were pretty much already developed even right from my university days, because I was quite active in my university. I was a student leader for so many years, and I was involved in several committees that I can't even count. So that alone has built a lot of my different skills that were quite transferable. So, but the truth is, coming to the UK kind of fine tuned it. That was where I would say I went through the polishing process, right? So I picked on new skills, and the ones that were developed before were polished and fine tuned, in the UK during the process of my masters.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now for let's go into the bit of you educating us now based on your experience. For let me use myself as an example. For somebody that came basically straight from secondary school to the UK, there were minimal opportunities to develop skills back in Nigeria, being in secondary school, and then there was COVID and life was happening. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah.
How would you advise somebody that is now coming into the UK? Maybe the person has also had their degree but didn't have like opportunities like you did, or did not take up opportunities, and then they are now in the UK. If that's that, let's look at that scenario like that. How would that kind of person build themselves up, build their skills up to be able to make themselves employable?
That's a very good question. I think if I were to be in that person's shoes, like I said before, the first thing is to recognize the industry you want to stay in, right? So for me, I knew I was going to be in the healthcare sector, come what may. That's where I want to find myself, regardless of the role or whatever. I just wanted to be. So I stuck to that industry specifically. So I think the first advice I would give that person is to sit down and look at what they've got now and identify a particular industry where they feel they can build their career on, or in rather. And once that's done, the next thing would be creating a path for themselves, right? So when I mean creating a path, it's about reflecting on the position where you're at. So you're in point A, but your goal is to get to point F, right? So now, when you're creating your path, you're going to be looking at how can I move from point A to point F. And that's you mapping your journey, right? And having an idea how you'd find your way from point A to point F, right? Now, this part is where it gets really personal for every single person, because at the end of the day, your journey could be straight down and your journey could be zigzag. But the major thing is you're moving from point A to point F. And also, you have to recognize that this move won't happen overnight. It takes a long process. For some people, it could take them 2 years, some three, some five, some 10, 15, 20, 25 years, even 30 years. So you have to understand that this journey is a personal journey, first of all, and set the pace for yourself, right? So, but now, what are the hurdles or the roadblocks or the things we need to identify on how to get us from point A to point F in this instance? That's when the person will now to have to look at, okay, this is the point where I am now. This is the skills I have. What jobs do I have available that will further help me build on the skills that I need and also improve on the ones that I already have, right? So I usually tell a lot of people the most of the jobs, unfortunately, uh, people will correct me if I'm wrong, but most of the jobs that will most likely help you hone all of these skills will most likely be low paying jobs or menial roles or entry level roles, internships, you know, schemes, all of those things, placement, etc. Are all of those. That's where you get into the industry, you get the necessary tools and skills that you need to climb up the ladder and move on. So once you start getting the skills per stage, You keep weighing and keep moving to the next higher step. So the next higher step is different from every single person based on where they want to based on the goal they want to achieve, or the goals that you set for yourself in relation to your career.
Yeah, it's actually funny that you mentioned starting with very menial roles because on I think about 2 days ago, I was at a networking event and I met this lady that was from Nigeria and she was complaining to someone like, oh, I was a senior, I was like a senior person in this role that I was working in Nigeria. And then now I'm in the UK. I have to start all over again. And that's something a lot of people tend to misunderstand when they come here. I've seen a lot of people, they come, they'll be like, oh, I was a manager, I was a supervisor, I was a lead where I was working in Nigeria. But it's like what people need to understand. This is me adding my two bits here from what I've seen in people. What people need
Yeah.
to understand is that when you move from Nigeria to the UK, it's two different systems. You're not just going to come and be like, oh, I'm an international student and expect yourself to immediately be in a managerial role or like a director role. You have to start all over again because, first off, you need to know the work dynamics of how things work in the UK. You need to understand the people, you need to understand the culture. It's not it's not always about your degree or your certificate. There are things we call transferable skills. These transferable skills are sometimes even more important than the actual industrial skills or industrial skills. That's what I'll call them because work culture in the UK I've observed is very, very important. And it's also important for you to network. And that's one thing I want to talk about networking.
Yeah.
Personally, I find it hard to network. Why? Most times when I go into a space, I have this, I don't know if to call it like a cultural thing. I have this tendency or this urge to look for somebody that looks like me. So, someone that is African or black or someone that speaks like me. Do you understand?
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you, how do you work with that? So it could be different for you. You could be more comfortable with different kinds of people, British, Asian, whatever. But in terms of fitting into the system when it comes to networking, did you ever feel out of place or did you ever feel like you need to do a lot to present yourself out there when you're networking? Because obviously, before opportunities don't just come to you, you go to look for opportunities. And one way to find opportunities is through networking.
Right. So that's a very interesting one. You've mentioned two key things. You've mentioned culture and you've mentioned networking. Those are two huge elements that could play a very important factor in anybody's career, right? First of all, I'll talk a little bit about culture. You see, a lot of people come to the country or come to the UK or go abroad or anywhere else with so much skills from different sectors where they've worked at. I've met different people like that. And you could see from the way they talk to you that they actually know what they are doing. They are experts in their field, right? But a major factor is the cultural part, right? You've worked 20, 25 years in Nigeria in the banking center of in finance or in health, and you know what you're doing, right? You've won several awards, you've won several accolades, you're recognized in your field. But another thing that a lot of people forget to consider is how well can you integrate into the culture in the United Kingdom. It plays a huge, huge, huge role on how successful you would be in a new role that you've been offered in the UK here.
When you say integrate, what do you mean
Yeah.
by that?
Integrate means you're going into an organization that already has a culture and you're coming as a person, you probably already also have your own culture and your own belief. How well are you able to blend in into the culture of your organization? A lot of people don't understand this. Culture is actually very huge. There's something called organizational culture. Organizational culture in layman terms can be the values, the philosophies of a huge organization. For example, like an NHS trust where they have 5,000 staff. But mind you, these 5,000 staff don't work together. They have teams that they work with, that they work in rather. Every team also have their own culture. So when you're working into an organization, it's not just the overhead culture of that particular organization, it's also the culture of the team you'll be working with. And that's the hardest bit because this team already have an identity, they have a way of working, whether it's good or bad, there's still something happening. So how well are you able to blend in into the culture of your team? It's one of the major things. Integration into the culture of organizations is one of the major things immigrants generally struggle with in the UK, but it's actually not been talked. It's now getting a little bit of noise. You see a lot of people, a lot of senior managers talking about integration, in cultural integration. Before now, it wasn't so much talked about, but over the years, you see that a lot of even people that are employed directly because they are health workers and they have the skills and they are able to meet the benchmark of the UK, they still struggle with integrating into the culture of the country and even the culture of their team. So it's a major, major one. Yeah,
I can
yeah,
imagine a lot of people having problems with integrating because if you look at the cultures, there's a huge difference. There's literally a huge gap between the work culture in Nigeria and then the work culture in UK. But
yeah.
in terms of integrating, you sound like you have integrated. So how do you do it?
I would say I'm still trying. I think for me, what helped me was I was conscious of it, of the fact that I needed to understand the way these people think. How do they crack jokes? How do you talk to them? So personally, I did a lot of studying. First thing I did was to improve on my listening skills. Yes, it's not because I don't know how to speak English, but sometimes the accent can be can be a problem when you're trying to communicate, right? One thing I know I know this because we've discussed it with several friends all the time is the fact that a lot of people don't understand when they're even at work and their colleagues are trying to have a chat with them. They don't really understand what their colleagues are saying. They just speak words. So if you're beginning to pick words to try to communicate to your colleague, then you definitely struggle in that kind of an environment. And at the same time, you hinder the flow of your conversation when you're trying to say, "Can you repeat what you said, please?" every single time, or you're saying, "Pardon, pardon, pardon," every single time when you. So that would just discourage your colleague from trying to have a chat with you. Yes, because I mean, I'll put myself in that person's shoes and I'm trying to speak with you and you keep telling me, "Can you repeat yourself?" It just drains me, right? So that was one of the major things I discovered. And immediately I started working on my listening skills. So it meant that for me to be able to communicate effectively with an average British person in this instance, I have to listen actively to them and not just passively. So I can pick every single thing this person is trying to say to me. That's one bit of it. The second bit or the second hurdle was to understand how they crack jokes because they don't crack jokes the same way. Slangs also is very important. You know, a lot of people don't know this. In different workplaces you have different slangs. I remember in my previous workplace, my manager used the word janky. It was very funny. Janky is necessarily doesn't necessarily mean probably not even a proper English word, but janky is like a British slang. there are still more slangs, right? Depending on the environment where you or the part of the UK where you live in. So it's trying to understand the people within the environment where you live. Try to understand what tickles their fancy. Try to understand how to crack jokes. If you're able, I'm not saying you're a comedian, but if you're able to make someone laugh or smile, then you're able to communicate to them effectively that way. And that way you'll be able to get, what you want from them. And also trying to understand the behavioral patterns also. A cup of coffee can go a long way. A cup of tea can go a long way. A bar of chocolate can go a long way. All of these are ingrained in the culture.
You saying this is making a lot of experiences that I've had actually make sense. Because
Exactly.
I've always wondered, okay, why did this happen? I actually lost a job once because it was a retail job. I work at a coffee shop. And when people come and they're like, oh, I want this, I'm like, what? And I
Exactly.
remember them telling me, oh, you can't say what. I'm like, what for me in my culture is me saying, can you say that again, please? I'm not trying to be rude. So I basically lost that opportunity, which I loved doing so much because of that cultural barrier. So sometimes
Exactly.
cultural barrier is not always, oh, you don't understand English, I understand those kind of things. It's even in the littlest things, like the smallest things, which is what people need to learn, like you were saying, to learn to actively listen, not to
Yeah.
become like the British people or like the people in your environment. But they say when in Rome, you act like a Roman for you to be
Exactly.
able to get into that
Exactly.
system. So for the
Exactly.
audience listening, that's what we're trying to say here. For you
Exactly.
to not to become like them, but to learn to adapt, to be a
Adapt.
part of that culture. But because you want that opportunity most times more than they do. So you are the one that has to work for it.
That's you've also raised a very vital point to say they want the opportunity, or you want it more than them. The good thing is, the moment you're able to speak in their language, they become
Mm-hmm.
curious and they want to know more about
More
you
about you.
also.
Yeah, very true.
I remember sharing, different. I still keep sharing with my colleagues at work everywhere I go about Nigeria. The more we learn, we learn from each other,
Mm-hmm.
right? My current boss the other day was telling me how he met a very popular Nigerian football player in the gym,
Oh wow.
in the name of Odewinge.
Yeah, I don't know who
So
that
so
is.
as much, yeah, you see, you don't even know who
I
that
don't know
is.
who that is.
He even knows. I can tell you, he knows more about Odewinge that probably two of us both know,
Lol.
because he Odewinge played in a football club that he supports. He's
Mm,
actively supporting. You understand what I mean?
yeah.
And that's because he probably felt I was a Nigerian and was relatable to me. So the more you're able to communicate, the more they will also want to know more about you too and your own culture. And
That's
that's
true.
when the integration start happening. You talk about spices in Nigeria,
Mm,
the way
that's a
we
very
eat
big
pepper
one.
from the Nigerian, from the Yoruba side, for example,
Yeah.
jollof rice. You talk about music. That's where all of those come in. But if you don't understand how it works, then there's no how you have that opening to have that kind of conversation with your work colleagues that are not from Nigeria, for example.
Yeah. So it's about you creating a middle ground. You
A
meet each
middle
other
ground, exactly, meet each
halfway.
other at the middle.
Yeah.
My first line manager when I was at Coventry University, I actually created a Spotify playlist of Afrobeat music for her.
Wow.
Yes. You know what I mean? So it's about being curious rather,
Mm-hmm.
to be able to learn about the culture of these people
Yeah.
and asking a lot of questions when you don't know. There's still a lot of times people use slangs, and I'm like, what do you mean? What's the meaning of that?
Of that.
Sometimes if
True.
I'm not able to ask, I just Google it,
Google it.
and
Yeah.
then I get to understand the context.
Mm-hmm.
I eat the food if I can. You go for team bonding sessions, you go to the pub,
Yeah.
you go for dinners, you do secret Santa. It's all part of the culture. you have to be actively involved.
Involved, yeah. Yeah, they even get more interested in you when you show yourself. You show interest in knowing what they know, in learning their ways. But that also brings me to a more a more negative side of things. I would call this side negative, honestly, because I feel like it affects a lot of people, and that's the issue of systemic racism and discrimination in the workplace, most especially.
Okay.
I was so for one of my modules this year, we talk about like barriers that we face as students who are now turning graduates. And one of the things my friend was looking into was how a lot the barriers that international students face. And one of the things that always comes up in our conversation is systemic racism. I think I learned about systemic racism for the first time from you, actually, from a conversation we were having time back. And I just want to know, what has been your experience with that? What have you seen with systemic racism? What exposed you to that? Was it something you knew before you came here, or it was when you were trying to obviously find your way and integrate that you found out there was such a thing as systemic racism? Because I also had to learn that racism was not just, oh, you're a black person walking on the road and they shoot you or they arrest you. Like it happens in many like American movies that we see. But the question now is, what has been your experience with that?
Right. So yes, actually learned the term systemic racism when I came to the UK, and this was as a result of a lot of digging into different information and trying to read and watch different podcasts and listen to different people, really, share knowledge and all of those. But one thing I would say is, in when it comes to the issue of systemic racism, right? I think for me, I won't say I've actually experienced it in a way, right? Because I've always been the ground has always been level, and it always been open for anybody to take it, right? So it's not like, well, this is for this particular set of people. You can't do this, you can't do that. If you get what I mean. Yeah, but also racism is a very very sensitive topic. That's number one, and number two is I really appreciate that most organizations are beginning to you know have a system where they are beginning to talk about all of these things. So it's not as rampant as it was 2, 3, 4, 5 decades ago anymore. So it's more about equal opportunities. It's more about open discussions about all of these things and how it affects different colleagues across different places, you know, and people sharing their experiences and learning from them. But I think one thing I would just say in relation to racism is I was scrolling to the internet scrolling through the internet recently, and I saw something in relation to racism. I think it was General Odumegu Ojukwu. I think he was being asked by the media when he came back, I think from Oxford University back in the days, about racism. And he said something, I can't remember exact words, but the summary of it all is he was like, when you don't look for something, you're not going to find it. Right. So I think a lot of people are becoming overly sensitive to these things. And that's when even little jokes tend to be like racism to them and taken out of context, for example. So I think it's more about you trying to understand the way the system works other than being overly sensitive to racism, to be honest. I don't think I've ever experienced any colleague being racist towards me or being discriminatory in any way towards
Yeah.
me.
So I guess it's about how you look at it. It's
Exactly.
about how you
Exactly.
see it.
Exactly. You can see it as a six
Mm,
or a
or a
nine.
nine. Wow, that's very, very that's a different point of view. Hi, it's me again, and as usual, I'm making a quick pause to thank you for listening to this episode of the Real Japa Experience. I'm sure this episode has been very impactful and educational to you. So I would encourage you to please continue to listen up until the end. This is also another reminder that as you're listening, after you're done listening, please do make an effort to leave a review on Spotify or on YouTube or wherever you're listening to the Real Jackpot Experience from. Please leave a feedback. It's really important so that I'm able to know what you like or don't like, and I'm able to create episode content that matches your preferences. On the next part of this episode, Jeremiah would be taking us through the importance of being a good ambassador for your country and changing the perspective of how people see your country. So he's going to be talking about the things that he did and how we could, as Nigerians, change the perspective that people have about Nigeria, talking about overcoming stereotypes and discrimination. Is also going to be reflecting on the things that he did or didn't do to develop his skills and his career goals. And he's also lastly going to be talking about why it's important to stay focused on your goal and ensure that each job opportunity aligns with your long-term vision. So this is where you learn that it's good to have a short-term goal, but also to look at the bigger picture and have a long-term goal or vision. So yes, please keep listening and I'll see you on the other part of this episode. Thank you. And you know what? It actually relates to what I've been thinking about recently. Because for that module that we were doing as well, I am looking into like the lack of ethnic diversity in the PR industry, which is an industry that I'm looking to work to. And I had an interview with one of my lecturers who is like a senior colleague in that industry. And she
Yeah,
was just telling me, you know what, Joanna, it starts with you. If you want to see more Black people in your industry, once you get there, make the way for them to get into it.
that's a
Teach,
vital point.
yeah,
That's a
teach,
vital point.
create a room for exposure, expose people to, if you found a way to get into it, show it to other people to be like, okay, this is a way you can get into it. And it just brings it together with the conversation I'm having with you now. Like, it's how you see it. They
Exactly.
might
It's a
just,
perspective.
exactly, perspective is very, very important. And even if somebody is being racist to you, you can choose to ignore, because that's probably one person out of thousands that you're going to meet in a lifetime.
Well, I would say I would interrupt here that it's not even about be it starting. Of course, it starts with you, but at the same time, I remember one of my senior colleagues when I used to be a lecturer at Coventry University used to say something. He said, "You have to. You're waving the flag of Nigeria anywhere you go to. Nigeria already has bad press, right? Once you mention you're Nigerian, is it that you're African prince or internet scammer? But that's what people choose to see and hear. We have a lot of Nigerians that I can't even remember their names right now that are doing fantastic things on a daily basis, right? Probably more than the number of people that are doing bad, but the bad actually goes viral most, you know. So your own goal for me, or my own goal as a Nigerian, is to change the perception of people and the way they see Nigerians. So every single place I walk and every single person I meet with along the side of work, I always give them a different image of Nigeria. And I don't even need to talk about Nigeria. I am a Nigerian, and you see the way I behave with integrity, with respect and professionalism. You know what I mean? So it's about that too. You don't even need to. show people the way or do too much. But if you yourself, in that place where you're working, you're a good ambassador of your country, that automatically change the perception of the people. With time, change the perception of the people about the particular demographic, you know, of Nigerians. Because the next time they will be recruiting, they will say, "Oh yeah, we have one Nigerian that is working with us on our team, and he's doing fantastic thing. He's done this, he's done that. He or she has done this and has done that." You know what I mean? Before I left, a senior colleague was saying to me how they've recruited about 20 Nigerians into a particular role. I was surprised. 20 Nigerians at once. So that means someone there, or the Nigerians there must be doing something different to have attracted or even justify the fact that a particular set of people will recruit 20 Nigerians at the same time.
And that's how it is, because it was one person that scammed somebody that was
Exactly.
Nigerian that made everybody
Ex-
assume all Nigerians are scammers.
exactly.
It's funny how life works. But moving on now into your most recent part of life, you venturing into your graduate visa options. So, correct me if I'm wrong. When you graduated, you immediately opted for the post study work visa.
Yeah, that's right.
Why is that? Why didn't you
I
just go
was I
for the
was still
skilled
working
worker
in the
visa?
warehouse when when I finished as a student, right? I was still working in the warehouse, still trying to. I think that was one of the major things. I think looking back into my journey, I regret a little bit is the fact that I didn't do a lot of my reflections early to understand the points where I was and understand what I really wanted. So that's why anybody listening to this or listening to this podcast and you're a student, don't wait till when you're one semester to graduating to start thinking about what you want to do. It starts from the first day you get into uni. It starts counting from there. You have to start plotting your journey from there. For me, if you're a master student like me that only had about even less than 12 months to really figure everything out, you don't have so much time. And the pressures of different things, of school, personal issues, can just sweep you away and you don't remember or you don't even think about how your future will be after uni. It's a very, very, very important aspect of your life. I think it's as important as even your academic, basically. I'll rate it on the same standard or on the same level. Or I'll put both of them on the same level. Having good grades is good, but figuring out what you want to do afterwards is likewise important, right? So that's number one. I think for me, I opted for the postgraduate work visa because I felt that 2 years is like a lifeline to buy me time to figure out what exactly it is I want to do. And that was exactly what I did with the visa. I experimented a lot, worked different jobs. I was lucky as well, like I said in the beginning of the podcast rather. I'm one of the lucky few. I got recruited to start working on a teaching team of my course immediately after, and I grew and found my way from there. I started reflecting what matters to me the most. What exactly is it that I want to do? What kind of a team do I want to be working with? What kind of job do I want to be applying for? And how do I get there? So that was exactly. I just started building from there. You know, I was in teaching for almost a year or more than a year. You know, I moved on from an hourly paid lecturer to an assistant lecturer. From there, I moved to the NHS. I worked in IT for a while as a system support analyst for over a year, and now I'm an improvement coach and a training lead, which is something I want to do. or I'm happy
You're
to
happy to
do.
do something that
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
that most times baffles me when you're talking about your career is the drastic change. So you went
Yeah.
from studying global, no, let's start from your bachelor's. You studied basic medicine,
Yeah. Physiology.
physiology, and then you came to the UK, did global health
Yeah.
management.
Global healthcare management.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
then you went on to become a lecturer.
That's right.
And then you went on to become tech bro. You were doing IT.
Yeah.
And then now you're doing, what's it called
I'm
again?
into improvement. So I'm an improvement coach and a training lead. So I facilitate improvement projects, help teams to kickstart their improvement journey. So it's more fun, you know.
Okay, so now what is sparking or like perking my curiosity is there's like a flow. It's not, you're not doing exactly the same thing. Do you get
Hmm.
what my question, like
Hmm.
you're not doing exactly the same thing. Why is that and how does that work?
Exactly. So a lot of people tend to be carried away by the job titles. It's not about the job title, it's about the job and the skills that you need to do the job. So I'm one of those that don't get carried away by the job titles. It's about how will this job help me develop as a person and move me towards my goal in relation to my career. So I might have had different job titles along the way. I probably will still have a lot more in the future, you know. But if we want to dissect every single job that I've done, I can assure you that there's a little bit of transferable skills from one job to the next job to the next one. They are interconnected, even though they look like different things. A lot of people feel because you're in IT, right? You're doing just IT. But I can assure you that there are some elements of IT that has more to do with customer service than even IT itself. Yes. So I was in IT for a year and some months. I never really coded. So I tech itself, it's a world of its own, right? You have different people doing different things, and there are a lot of opportunities and a lot of pathways there, and there's a lot of skills to pick up. And one of the major skills you pick up in IT is what we call customer service skills or interpersonal skills, which is huge. And you can break that into different elements and different forms, you know. So because when you say you have interpersonal skills, that means you're able to communicate in clear terms with people, you're able to relate with them, you're able to explain things to them in a way that they will understand, you know. So what I would advise people is don't get carried away by the job title or how huge the job title looks. It's about the skills that you need to do the job. So always look at the skills that you need to do the job and not just the job title.
Yeah, that's bringing me back to our talk about culture, because I would say the work culture in Nigeria is you are a lecturer for 50 years. I'm just exaggerating, but like for
Yeah,
a whole lifetime, you're doing one job. And sometimes when they call it job hopping, isn't it? They would count it as job hopping, but it's like people also need to see the this is for the audience now, like we need to see the bigger picture of things, like Jeremiah is saying, like all of the different jobs that he has done currently, they are interconnected in terms of the interpersonal and transferable skills that he has gotten from that. And obviously one thing you need to know is you have to stay on track with your goal. At the end of the day, whatever job role or job opportunity you're taking on, make sure when you go back to the vision board, for those that, or like the goals, is still leading you to that.
exactly. Exactly. So when you're writing your goals, you write, okay, probably for example, I want to be an executive towards retirement, my career. But you need series of skills to be there, right? As an executive, you probably should have worked in your sector for like 10 years. And in that 10 to 20 years, for example, you must have done a lot of projects, remarkable projects that have probably saved costs, brought in improvements, improved the quality of life of people that are, using the service that you're rendering in your industry. So it's all about breaking it down to that tiny detail, really, at the end of the day. And one thing you have to understand is the overall heading of this is, as a person, you have to be a person that offer value. You have to be a person of value. That's your currency. How much value are you able to give? How much value are you able to bring to the table in in the world of your career? Your value is your currency. Exactly. So the more value you're able to give, or the more value you're able to bring into an organization or a team, the more higher
Would be
your
also.
opportunities
Yeah. So it's
would be
before they
also.
ask you, you should always ask yourself, what do I bring to the table? I'm
That
taking that
should
one.
be
I'm
that
noting
should be
that one
your
down.
constant reflection,
Reflection.
because
True.
that's your currency. Just the way you have your bank account
Yeah.
where you're always checking on your finance and tracking your spending, you
Mm-hmm.
should also be tracking your skill level. What do you need to add? How much time do you will it take you? What value will you get from it? And what value will you bring at the end of the
At the end
day?
of the day. It's true. Okay. So one of the other things that I want to ask you is, there's been a constant change in the immigration policy since we're talking about visa options now. There's been
Yeah.
like a constant change recently. They've increased the amount of salary you need to be earning to get a to get a skilled workers visa or something like that. How do these constant changes affect you?
Honestly, it did affect me, because I mean, you every single person too that I know that is close to me that were probably on the same level together was also affected. So I think it just bothers us, when things like it just puts you on the edge when the rules keep changing. It increases the pressure, not just the pressure on you, it, it also comes with a lot of financial pressures too, because I was right on track with my savings before the IHS fee, for example, got increased. So I had to double up. I had to, do other things to be able to make sure that I was able to raise the funds to apply for the visa, because the fee was increased. So that also itself, it's already a pressure. And the pressure of being able to meet the benchmark or not, you know. So it's a little bit worrying, the immigration laws. But at the same time, I choose to remain positive, and to be optimistic about the future, really. And that's why I know this sounds like a cliche, but it still boils down to what I said before about being a person of value. So the more value you're able to offer, the more opportunities you would have, right? And once you have the right opportunities come your way, you're able to grab them and utilize them and run with them. You would need to really bother so much about the visa, because that would come alongside as a benefit of the value you're willing to offer. Because honestly, the visa is expensive. Recruiting anybody internationally is expensive for both the person and even the organization.
Yeah, you see, you make a very good point that links to something that I was going to ask you. One of the things that I've observed, okay, so again, as a graduate, I've been doing my research. Who will employ me? Who are those that are able to employ me? A lot of, and then I shockingly realized that a lot of employers are actually not educated on becoming sponsors for international students.
Yeah.
And sometimes they are not willing to spend to get the license to sponsor.
Mm.
What would one do in a situation like that?
Well, I think it depends on the organization, and it depends on their their plan for the future. Really, every organization have their policies, I believe, around recruitment, how much international people they have budgets to recruit. So I think it's just about, you know being you have to filter it down to the ones that actually have the license. All of this information is out there. The organizations that have the licenses to sponsor people, and you know that they have a track record of employing internationals. So for me, those are the kinds of organization you target, whether government or private or anything. But you just target those ones and try to see if you can get a role under the sector you're looking at, under those organizations. Yeah. Not all organizations would want to sponsor or would want to get a license to sponsor, right? Because of how expensive it is, and a lot of layers of legislation also that you have to be careful over, when you're doing it, because you don't want to get a license revoked also, right? So it's a lot of it's a very complicated thing, to be honest, and I think it's intentionally complicated. Right. So a lot of organizations might be open to it, some might not be, but your major targets should be organizations that already know about the laws and already sponsoring, rather than trying to convince an organization that doesn't have a license to get a license. Yeah. Yes. So I think that there are a lot of information on the Home Office websites where you can download a spreadsheet of a list of people, organizations that have got sponsorship licenses, and then you could easily apply Excel filters to narrow down to what you specifically need, and then you start searching from there.
Okay. Yeah. Listening to you speak now, I just feel like it differs for every industry, because
It
in
does. It
in the
does
media
differ from every
industry,
industry. Yeah.
yeah, I can't lie, in the media industry, in the communications industry generally, employing international talent is hard for an industry that needs it the most. Is very bad.
There's no one size fits all approach, right? Some people are on tier two skilled workers visas. Some people are on global talent visas. So they are different. I think it's about researching, right, to see what opportunity you have. It's open to you based on your sector, right, and trying to exploit.
That's true. I guess it's all about exploring and checking what opportunities are available to me, and, just working through it all to find something that works at the end of the day. Thank you so much. Really, I've learned a lot today. One last thing to ask is, do you have something to add to everything you've, spoken about on today's episode? We're learning from you, like I said. So if there's any more thing that you would like to share that would be helpful to those of us that not quite yet at the stage that you're at now as someone who was an international student. So please feel free to share all of that.
No worries. I think the only thing I would like to touch base on is on the networking bit. I don't think I was able to say a lot on the networking because we delved more into the cultural bit. Yeah, so a little bit on networking also is it's just a little bit of advice not to isolate yourself also as an international talent. Don't isolate yourself. Join communities, right? That's where you meet people. You won't meet people in your bedroom. You have to join community. You have to belong to a community, you know, to be able to meet people, right? And a good way to start is looking at your interest. What are the things you like to do? Look for communities around those things. There's definitely going to be a chess club somewhere. You have the gym. Although I personally I go to the gym, but I don't talk to anybody in the gym. But the gym is also a good place to meet people, like-minded people. You'll be surprised the different caliber of people that go to the gym. You'll be shocked. You'll be shocked. Religious institutions also are part of them. So whether it be the for Muslims the mosque, I don't know what happens there to be honest, but I know the church is a community. I think one of the major places that really helped me is the church community, where you get to meet people, people from different careers, and they're able to advise, and tell you and pinpoint to different places and tell you, okay, why don't you do it this way, do it that way, just trying out different things and hearing different opinions. Sometimes, the church is also a good community. So depending, the travel community is there if you like traveling and sightseeing, cooking. The UK is just huge. If you go on or just Facebook alone, you could search for different pages where you could connect with people, you know so that's a good way to start networking. Network based on your interests, you know and then that way you're a little bit relaxed and you can have conversations with people, because you're having conversation first based on the things you have interest on. Football, for example, I know friends that have a community of football where they gather together every weekend to play football. I don't play football, so I've been invited a couple of times. I'm like, guys, I don't play football, so I don't think that works for me, and all of those things. Different things work for different people. Try to be involved socially. There's a social networking is a social is a social element, right? Whether be it formal or informal, right? Networking is a social. It has the most huge part of networking. It has to do with the social element part. So you have to be out there to meet people. Really, you have to be ready to meet people. You have to be ready to converse, to have conversations with people. And I'll recommend, even for people that struggle to having conversations, I'll recommend checking out books on how to have conversations with people. There are different books that could help, different self-help books that could help. Listen to podcasts about around things like that. You could watch YouTube videos. There are a lot of different resources you could use, to help yourself and help develop your confidence in talking to people, and and networking also, right, and meeting people. So that's one of the major elements. And then of course the formal element of it will be attending job fairs. Also is very important. Try to see if you can attend different job fairs in different location. A lot of people are stuck to one location. If you're looking for opportunities, you can't be stuck in a particular location. You have to be flexible. You have to be willing to go outside of your comfort zone a little bit. you know Go out there, look at different places, look at different how different organizations do different things in relation to the sector you're looking to work into. Check if they have job fairs, be in touch with them, have a LinkedIn page. That's a good place to start. A lot of people don't even have a LinkedIn page. They don't even they don't update their LinkedIn profile. LinkedIn is a very, 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 very good place. Most of the jobs I've gotten is via LinkedIn. you know yeah, I see the ad on LinkedIn.
Yeah, what you just said about LinkedIn is very, very true. LinkedIn is one of the resources that people actually sleep on. I use LinkedIn. I use my LinkedIn like it's my Instagram. The same energy I give on my Instagram is the energy I give on my LinkedIn, just more formally and professionally. But LinkedIn is so good. The people that I've met on LinkedIn that I know I'm probably never going to meet in real life. It's a lot of them like that. But it just exposes me to a lot of um, industrial insight, and it sparks my creative side because I see people that have gotten to high levels in my industry and I see what they're doing and it's like, wow, that person is doing this. Let me start thinking, what can I do that is in relation to this? If I was this person, what would I have done differently? And even that on its own is so good. But something else that you mentioned that people sleep on a lot, like people take for granted, are the career fairs. Universities in the UK, they organize all of these things. I know BCU. BCU does career fairs at least once a month, but you barely see people go there. And even some people that go there, they go there for the the snacks or like the souvenirs that are given. That's not bad. We all do it, but also go there to network, go there to meet people. BCU, for instance, I'll always use BCU as an example because that's my uni in it. That's what I know. They would invite employers. Um, My first placement that I did in the UK in a PR agency, it was because they came to talk about the opportunities that they offer students in their agency. That's how I was able to apply for that placement. I wouldn't have known about it just from searching randomly, or I wouldn't have the boldness to apply for it just from searching randomly. But because I had met them, I had had a conversation about them, I, asked questions, I knew a bit about their agency and the culture of their agency. I was able to apply for that to get that opportunity. Those are people that are now in my network. I have that connection. So it's very, very important. Use every resources that is available to you to network. Trust me, you're not going to regret it. And it's fun because you meet people and you have conversations with them and you just never know what you're going to get from that conversation. But at the end of the day, you learn one or two things. They learn something about you. You present yourself in a way if they need somebody at a certain point that you have presented yourself to be good at, they're going to call you. That's how people get gigs. That's how people get job. That's how people get jobs. So put yourself out there. Always, always put yourself out there. Don't let anything stop you from putting yourself out
Yeah,
there.
you have to be very proactive. You know, go out to events. It might not even be job fairs. It might be. I remember I attended the TEDx event at Cov Uni. That was the first time I met to the chief medical officer of University Hospital Coventry and Warwickshire, UACW. Now he's gone to the University Hospital Birmingham, I think, to also be the chief medical officer there. So you meet, these are spaces, people that you would normally not would probably not have the opportunity to have a conversation with on a normal day. You meet them there and you'll be able to have 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and that's where your confidence comes in. You have to be able to prepare your mind, read a lot. Reading is a big element. Yeah, you have to be knowledgeable to be able to carry these conversations sometimes. Be a knowledgeable person, be a person of value. That's me concluding, really. Be a person of value, be a knowledgeable person, be curious. A lot of people are not curious. You have to be someone that is curious. Yeah, your curiosity level has to be high. Be open to learning new things, right? Even though it's not comfortable for you, if it's learning, why not? You know, no knowledge will be a waste at the end of the day. So be open to learning new things, new concepts, new ideas. Just be open. Just be an open person generally. That's one of the ways to be a person of value. And also, I would always say this: your state of mind is also very important. You have to have a sound mind to be able to function properly. Your mental health is important. Your physical health is important. So you have to take care of all of those too. And if you're a spiritual person like me, that you hold your faith in a very, very high value, your faith is also important. I usually tell people, whether I believe in God, I'm a Christian, so I would say this proudly and boldly. I feel there's always not, I don't just feel, I believe that there's always a God element attached to everything I do and every step I take, right? So, I mean, God can be different things for different people. You can believe in different things. Whatever it is you believe in, I respect it. But for me, I'm Christian and I believe there's always a God element in every step I take and in every single thing I do. So, faith is a big, big thing for me, you know. So whatever it is you believe in, uphold it tightly because there's always going to be a God element to it. And for those that don't even believe in anything, just genuinely be a positive person, right? I was reading a book sometimes back. I've forgotten the title of the, yeah, it's called Good Vibes, Good Life, where they were talking about how, just being a positive person can, be relatable to the universe. And then just by being positive about something alone, positivity just comes your way even though you don't believe in anything. Just having good vibes can lead you to having a good life, technically. So just genuinely be an optimistic person and a generally, positive person. And if you believe in something, uphold your faith because there's always that element of it in every single thing you do, and be conscious of it, because it works. I'm a testimony, I'm a product of it. I believe there's an element of grace that goes with everything I do, and that's why I believe that's my faith. That even though I'm unable to, there are sometimes that you know God just helps you to shine in a way, and makes you unique in a way that others don't have. Some things that just makes you unique. Sometimes it's just an element of grace. It's not that you actually do have that thing, but it's just that God just helps you and just places you in those positions, to be able to, to be able to glorify himself in your life, basically. I think that's the point I'm trying to make. So in summary, just be a positive person, uphold your faith, take care of yourself, rest well, eat well, exercise if you can. Your health is very important. Your mental health, your physical health is very important. You know, all of those elements have to be taken care of. You have to have, there has to be balance. It's all about balance at the end of the day. There has to be balance. Family time, quality time for yourself, quality time with your God, you know, there has to be balance in all of these things. And that's the way you become a person of value. And that's how you have that currency to be able to spend, in relation to your career at the end of the day.
Exactly, exactly. Literally spot on because God, the element of faith and positivity are very like great ones that people tend to ignore. It's like, okay, I'm applying for a job. What does God have to do with it? If you're a Christian, we learn from very young age that faith has to do with everything. Faith is what makes you believe in the unknown. Say, take for myself, for instance, when I saw that my family wasn't able to pay for my tuition and I wanted to start a crowdfunding. Did I know that the crowdfunding was going to work? No. Why did I go ahead to do it? I had faith. I believed that God was going to do something. I just needed to take that step of faith. And something else that is important to note here is that people tend to say faith, faith, faith. But at the end of the day, you're just being religious because the same way you have faith is the same way you have to put in the work. So you are not just sitting there praying, God, I need a job. God, I need a job. Are you applying for jobs? Are you going to job fairs like we just spoke about? Are you using your LinkedIn? Are you networking with people? That is what differentiates faith, that is just religious belief, and intelligent faith, which is faith and work, faith and action, a faith where you pray and you take action, and God provides results from the actions that you take. God is going to work with what you give to Him. God is not going to come down from heaven and suddenly become a CEO of a company so that you can have a job. No, God expects you to apply for a job and then you pray and then you have faith that is going to make a way for you there. You have faith that favor is going to speak for you there. And that's just how it works. And I must say at this point that something else I have observed is a lot of young people, a lot of young Nigerians that I have met at different stages of life, they tend to come to the UK and it's like, yeah, I don't care about God. But anyways, to each their own. To each their own. What can we say? To each their own. But just like Jeremiah said, I am adding to that and emphasizing on that that faith is very, very important. If you don't believe in God, at least be positive and put in the work. People say, "Oh, I believe if I'm a good person, good things will come my way." Amen. Go go by what you believe. But at the end of the day, believe in something. Believe that there's something working behind the
Exactly,
scenes for you.
exactly. So it works. I believe in miracles. I believe in a lot of things. I believe all of these things happen. God opened doors for us. All of those things happen. But whoever it is that is going to be listening to this podcast, whatever it is you believe in, hold on tight to it. That's the message. That's the message. And genuinely be a positive person, because it will show, that light will definitely shine if you remain positive, no matter how hard it is. It's going to be a tough journey. It's never going to be a smooth journey. There will be a lot of disappointments, a lot of setbacks, and a lot of different things, like it's going to happen, it's not going to happen, it's going to happen, it's not going to happen. But eventually, everything just falls in place with time, right? You just need to hang in then.
You know,
Yeah.
what you've just said is it tends to be how everybody ends the episode. You know, the past guests, they always come to say, it's not easy, but you just have to keep pushing. And it's true. It's not easy. It's a fight. Being an international student, being an international talent abroad, is a literal fight. Guys, if I tell you, I've been fighting for my life for the past 3 years. But that's why, like Jeremiah said, even at the beginning, you need to have a goal. You need to have a goal that you're determined, whatever happens, I am going to achieve this goal. And that's what keeps you going. That determination of like, I have somewhere I want to be. I'm at point A. I need to get to point Z. So you fight. Whatever blocks your way, you fight for it and you get there at the end of the day. But yeah, that's it from us today. Thank you so much, Jeremiah, for coming, my dear brother. Thank you so much. To be very, very honest, I've actually learned a lot today that I myself, as the host and producer of this podcast, I'm going to put to application in my own life because as a young person, it's not easy. And thank God, we always have people ahead of us, like yourself. Even you have people ahead of you that have helped you to always, come back to ask questions, to listen to learn something. I have learned a lot today. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for coming. I truly appreciate it.
All right, then. And yes, thank you so much for having me. I think it's been indeed a honor to be part of your journey and to be part of your research project. And I hope anybody that will be listening to the podcast will find one or two things to pick from my own journey and probably find value in this also. And I genuinely wish anybody or all of the listeners listening to this, especially international talents, I genuinely wish every single person all of the best, and always try to reach out for help. Don't live in isolation. If you need help, always shout out for help. It's very important. Don't live in isolation. Shout out for help, and I genuinely wish you all the best. Bless. Thank you. Bye. Cheers.
Yes, guys. So, as a recap, today Jeremiah and I discussed what happens after international students graduate and the challenges they face in finding employment. We also touched on the importance of networking and cultural integration in the workplace. Our conversation explored the challenges of integrating into a new culture and the importance of understanding the cultural nuances of the different country that we are, whether UK, US, Canada, Germany, wherever you are, really. And we also touched on the topic of systemic racism and discrimination in the workplace. We emphasized the need for active listening, learning local slangs and humor, and adapting to the behavioral patterns of the new culture. Because when you do these things, some things that happen to you that you would usually class as racism will stop looking like racism to you. It will start to look like, oh, this is just how this person speaks. At the end of the day, it's all about understanding and perspectives as well. Also, very importantly, we talked about the importance of being a good ambassador of your country and changing the perspective, in our case, of Nigerians through positive actions. We all know a lot of people see Nigerians as scams and whatnot. So it is our responsibility to do our part. It starts with us to change the way people see Nigerians. Our conversation also highlighted the significance of reflection and planning for one's future career path. Don't just come to the UK for vibes. Before you come, already sit down. Think about what you want to be, how you want to be, what time, what year, how long is it going to take you to settle, how long is it going to take you to be financially stable. It's very important for you to sit down, reflect, and plan on these things. Jeremiah and I also discussed the importance of staying focused on that goal. So, obviously, when you've made that goal, it's very important to focus on it and work on yourself to become a person of value in your career because you have to think, what do you bring to the table? You're looking for employers to employ you. What are you offering these employers? What makes you different from the thousand graduates out there that are looking for employment? Work on yourself to become a person of value. Of course, we can't talk about visa and international students without talking about immigration policies. So we touched on the challenges of navigating immigration policies and their frequent changes. If you're in the UK, you know how these policies change a lot. And we talked about how difficult that can be. And lastly, but most importantly, we emphasize the importance of faith, positivity, and balance in achieving success as an international student. And that is it for this episode. Thank you so much for listening until the very end of the episode. I truly appreciate you. Those of you that listen up until the end, you are the real MVPs, and I'm sending you all my love and all my appreciation. So, a little announcement. I know some people will be sad to hear this. A little announcement before I close off this episode. This is going to be the last episode on season 1 of the Real Japa Experience that has a guest on it. 3 episodes so far, and it's been amazing. It's been so lovely listening to other people's story. Join me next week. Next week is going to be a special episode, and I'm going to be letting you guys know what the plan is for the future. Final question of the day: is there going to be a season 2? Well, join me next week to find out. I'll see you there.